Okay, so in the last segment we talked about David Hume's argument that you should never believe that a miracle's occurred on the basis of testimony. Lots of ways you could challenge Hume's argument. One way you could challenge it, you could challenge his definition of a miracle. You could say he's got that wrong. But I think there's another interesting way to challenge the argument. Challenge the assumption you should only trust testimony when you've got evidence the testifier is likely to be right. And that's the premise of Hume's argument that his most important contemporary critic, Thomas Reid, took issue with. So Reid was a minister in the Church of Scotland and a professor, universities of Aberdeen and Glasgow, and he challenged this assumption of Hume's in a book called Inquiry into the Human Mind on the Principles of Common Sense, which was first published in 1764. And the challenge comes in a section that Reid entitled, Of the Analogy Between Perception and the Credit We Give Human Testimony. So Reid argued that trusting testimony is just like trusting your senses, trusting what you see around you. So believing something on the basis of what someone else says is just like believing something on the basis of seeing it with your own eyes, Reid thought. So here's the interesting thing. We don't only trust our senses when we've got evidence that they're likely to be right. Hume and Reid, one of the sort of few things they agreed on was that we don't have any kind of good evidence that our senses are likely to be right. So Hume and Reid both thought we don't trust our senses on the basis of evidence that they're likely to be right. So what Reid's going to challenge is Hume's assumption that we should only trust testimony on the basis of evidence that the testifier is likely to be right. So why does he think that? What's his argument? Well, Hume and Reid both thought there were innate principles that governed how we think and how we feel. They wouldn't put it this way, but they both thought that we were hardwired to think in certain ways. So they both thought, for example, that we're hardwired to trust our senses. We're hardwired to believe what we see before our eyes. But here's what Reid thought that Hume didn't think. Reid thought that we're also hardwired to trust testimony. He said that there's an innate principle of credulity, he called it. And here's what that principle was. It's a disposition to confide in the veracity of others and to believe what they tell us.